Good evening, Los Angeles. Greetings, fans of Major League Soccer. Hello, lovers of the black and gold. And a massive shout out to the millions
and millions
of Defenders of the Bank listeners. This is episode 322 of the LAFC show that apparently your mother has warned you about. My co-host has been saying this, which leads me to believe that there are no more rules, and I can use words I have otherwise been forbidden to use on this family-friendly show. But have no fear. Have no fear. I will not dish out any of the dirt because I know many of you have little ones that don't need a foul-mouthed filly polluting their ears, at least not yet. For the most part, Defenders, this season we've had nothing but sunshines and rainbows to discuss. But you can't have the rainbow without the rain, and sadly for us, it was downpouring in the Midwest this past weekend. We will commiserate and try to uncomplicate these feelings of melancholy together. Misery loves company, and we are all here together and for one another. And I, too, love company when I am miserable. And my company is the man who is joining me. But before I introduce him, I should tell you who the hell I am. My name is Christian Philemon, the platinum-tipped flamingo. And joining me, the mouth of the South Bay, J.R. Liebert, also known by his alter ego, The
Scarf. What is good? Philly platinum tipped now is what we're going with. All right. I'm sure
it's starting to, the roots are getting darker.
I'm sure our buddy Ben has something to say about that in the chat. Hello to everybody out there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere that YouTube, everywhere that you consume our podcast and our content. We thank you so much for being a part of this, especially on a night where we have to commiserate a little bit, right? This would be not one, not two, not three, but 4 straight cup opportunities that have now gone by the wayside for LAFC. And the frustrating part about this one is that I think it's safe to say that if we play out the first half for another 90 seconds and keep them scoreless, and we play out the second half for another 90 seconds, I think this is a very, very different feeling show. Just completely gutted with the effort and the result in Columbus. Obviously, there are some silver linings to talk about. We have plenty of those with both Olivier Giroud scoring and the way that we played in the second half. Lots of good things to talk about. But Philly, it is definitely a feeling that you and I and all of the supporters out there, who we lovingly refer to as the millions
and millions,
are far too used to feeling over the last 2 years.
The funny thing is, we're all feeling in this melancholy, sad kind of a mood. But for many of us, y'all didn't like the Leagues Cup. Yet you're still feeling the pain of the Leagues Cup. And no doubt you would have felt the jubilation of the Leagues Cup had we won. And so, does that mean that this tournament has it finally arrived, as it hit us hard enough in the soul to want to get revenge next year, or maybe on the Columbus Crew? I think at the very least, now we're paying attention to the Leagues Cup, because we got so close yet again to more silverware, and the story isn't over for this season. Obviously, this doesn't run as deep as an MLS Cup final or a CONCACAF Champions Cup final. And so we obviously care, but think of it this way. 2 years ago, this thing wasn't in existence. At the very least, now we get to resume business as usual and go forward, which is what we wanted to do, in that of doing something in the U.S. Open Cup and obviously doing something with an MLS Cup. The nice thing is the hard task of securing a spot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup is over. Now, I know second place is the first loser, and I'll tell you, I believe that more so than many of you do. I felt that way my entire stinking life. I get it. We'll unpack this together, but at least I'm glad that the Leagues Cup is over, because now we can focus on truly what's important, and that's winning this damn league.
Yeah, I want to mention something in the chat. Gerardo Rios, he asks, what is it, guys? What is it that prevents us from getting over that line? Players, tactics, both. I think part of it is mental makeup, right? And the fact that when you've been in as many finals and lost them in a row as we have, maybe a little bit is mental, but you can't tell me that guys like Hugo Lloris, Olivier Giroud, that these guys are worried about anything mental. I don't think that's the case. I don't think a lot of our players, and Ilie Sanchez or or several of the other MLS hardened veterans that we have, Akai Kamara. I don't think it's mental for those guys. I think it can be kind of a mental attitude that the entire team could take up. But I think bad luck could be a part of it. I think lack of execution sometimes, right? I think if you look at the final that we played in Columbus, what is it, like 260 days ago, I think is what they said. If you look at the final that we played in Columbus, it never felt like we were in it. We were chasing the game the entire time. In this final, if you look at the way we played in the second half, we took it to Columbus. We turned the tables completely. And in fact, I'll say this, the goal that Cucho scored was putting a ball in a dangerous spot, by the way, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. It was against the run of play. We had controlled almost all of the second half, just like they had controlled all of the first half. And I think, like you guys are saying in the chat, a couple of you are saying maybe injuries, maybe a poor substitution or two. I have something to say about that a little bit later as well. But I think there's something to be said for making it to these finals, having a championship mentality to get there. I'm not yet ready to say it's not Steve Cherundolo. I really don't think it is. Look at the way we played the second half, you guys. If you bottle that second half, don't look at that third goal, because when you're pushing everybody forward, it is what it is. But I think it's still LAFC figuring out how to win the big things.
I mean, it could be, truthfully, something as simple as we're not as good as the other teams that we've competed against in the finals. Columbus has had our number. Columbus has been in 3 finals in the last 9 months, and had they not gotten this weird sickness, who knows, they might have beaten Pachuca and won CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. The Columbus Crew are just a better team than LAFC. I can't slice or dice it any other way. We absolutely got manhandled by Leon when we lost to them in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. We make it to these cups. It just so happens that the team we compete against are better than us. The team that we were stacked against equally, without a doubt, was the Philadelphia Union. That game was a coin flip, and it obviously went that way. Did the better team win? I will say yes, because I am biased in this perspective. But to me, I could just simply narrow it down as Columbus is without a doubt a much better team. And I don't want to say mentally they're a lot stronger, but if you look at the way we conceded in the dying moments of the first half, in the dying moments of the second half, that's a matter of to me, that's a mental thing. That's where fatigue comes into play. That's where there's other elements that go beyond tactics and coaches factor in. The tactics weren't the problem. I can't blame all of the players. Mistakes occurred, yes. But keep in mind, Hugo Lloris had 4 clean sheets throughout the course of Leagues Cup. People want to blame other players on this. This was a total team loss. And yeah, maybe Kike could have done this. Maybe Denny could have done something. Maybe everybody could have actually done something. But fact of the matter is, we lost to a good team. And that's it. Fact of the matter, we lost to the Columbus Crew, a much better team than us right now.
Yeah, and the nice part is we get to give our opinions. We get to talk about it, and we get to exercise those demons, that frustration. But what we are also all going to do, is we are going to be there on Wednesday when our boys travel up to Tukwila to play in the semifinals at Seattle Sounders, and we're going to support them just as loudly and just as fervently and just as passionately as we did this last weekend, as we have for the last 7 seasons. That's just what this is. This is an opportunity for all of us to say what we think we know, right? Because it's always fun to say what we think we know. But at the end of the day, we support the crest, we support the players, we support the club. So that being said, excuse me, Philly, a couple of things that we want to talk about straight on. We have yet to hear the official announcement or anything else regarding Kike Oliveira to Toluca. And we have started to hear the rumblings again, right, of Mateus Bogusz to Celtic. A formal bid was apparently made, if you believe some of the sources out there. But again, we're just throwing it out there as Toluca and Kike Oliveira not joined at the hip yet. Matty Bogusz to Celtic, nothing near confirmed on that yet, just to kick that off right from the top. I don't think there's anything to the Denis Bouanga to Club America rumors either. But
garbage. I don't believe that trash at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right, let's get into a quick this day in LAFC history because it's actually a fun one to think about. Look, if you were watching the game, it's on August 25th. So we go back to August 25th, 2019, our fifth ever El Tráfico in club history and the second of 2019. Game ended in 3-3 draw. And that was the incredible Paradise City tifo before the match. And man, I miss my boy Latif Blessing. Latif went toe-to-toe with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, both of them scoring 2 goals in the match. Carlos Vela in the 53rd minute scoring as well for LAFC. But that was when Carlos had a little hamstring injury and had to come out. And he was pretty pissed off as he made his way out. And if I remember correctly, he missed a little bit of time, but not much after that. And coming on to make his Major League Soccer debut, Brian, yes, Brian, in the 61st minute. Brian, the honorary Falconer.
The more I hear this kid's name, I start to be crying, tired, whatever.
The honorary Falconer in that one was none other than the captain himself, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was a really cool day at what was the Bank of California Stadium. Unfortunately, ending in 3-3, so we only get the 1 point, but a rather historic night. And Philly, I love it when LAFC makes me do some homework. Oh, LAFC acquiring David Ochoa's right of first refusal over the weekend. This was something that when I saw that, I was like, damn it, how MLS is MLS sometimes. In something I absolutely
Hey, hold on. I'm about to do something MLS. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
I got discovery rights on Mbappe. Boom!
I actually, there was an article on whoever has his discovery rights. Someone does. I think it's like FC Cincinnati or something like that. I don't even know.
I can't wait to go down the. I want to see this list on a monthly basis just to see who ends up on there. Can you imagine like the Vancouver Whitecaps have Erling Haaland's discovery rights, and I don't know, somehow Montreal Impact have rights to Jude Bellingham. I'm no doubt that's the case. It has to be.
This is what I love. Like, we're all familiar with the absurdity of discovery rights, right?
So dumb.
But I've never heard of something called the right of first refusal, which I had to look up. Or maybe it was Charlotte. I don't know. In something I had to look up, Philly, LAFC acquired David Ochoa's right of first refusal from the DC United in exchange for a 3rd round pick in next year's MLS Super Draft. And should Ochoa meet certain performance metrics, DC United could earn up to an additional $100,000 in GAM. So here's the exact explanation from MLS. If a former MLS player who the league previously attempted but was unable to re-sign returns to MLS, his former club, in this case DC United, will have what's called a right of first refusal. That means that the team is the only club that has the option to negotiate an MLS contract. David Ochoa is not under an MLS contract, even though he's under contract with LAFC 2. That's an MLS Next Pro contract. So we acquired the right to negotiate a contract with David Ochoa should he be needed in the first club. Obviously, Thomas Hasal is our current backup keeper to Hugo Lloris. It's not required to sign a short-term contract because he signed a short-term contract not only before the Columbus match, but earlier in the season as well. But what I think the club might be preparing for is the eventuality that you could only sign a player to 4 short-term contracts before you then have to sign them to a first-team deal. And here's the other thing to note, Philly, that I found was interesting. Only can we exercise the right to win a final? I love you, Ben.
We're saving that for the World Cup this year, Ben.
Right? Only players that are younger than 26, so 25 and under, can sign short-term contracts in the first place. Here's the interesting thing. How old is Abraham Romero?
26.
26. So in giving up Abraham Romero, we may not have been giving up the worst of the 4 keepers we had. We may have been giving up the keeper with the least amount of options moving forward. David Ochoa is still only 23 years old, which is why we can do that. That's the end of the homework assignment from Scarf, the right of first refusal, Philly.
If you and I managed to put together a book or a pamphlet or something, giving MLS newbies a comprehensive run of GAM, HAM, discovery rights, rights of refusal, I think we would be MLS legends in this case because there's so many peculiar rules that this league has. It's kind of comical, but at the same time, it's kind of fun too because just when you think you know everything you can about this league, some other craziness happens to run its course in front of all of our eyes. I don't know how many of you knew what a right to refusal was, but now you do. And so the list of questionable things Major League Soccer does continues to grow on and on and on. And what a fascinating league that we operate in. And of course, I'm saying that tongue in cheek.
And Philly, I'll say one other thing. If you just happen to search Kylian Mbappe on MLSsoccer.com, you do get a profile that's just waiting there to be used at some point. You get a profile. Born December 20th, 1998, 25 years old, Paris, France, 5'10", 161. I'm just saying it's there. There's nothing under latest news or anything, so I don't know who has his discovery rights.
I do. I claimed it earlier. What do you mean? Whoever wants the rights to Kylian Mbappe needs to give me $500,000 in general allocation Philly money. I've got the rights. I call dibs. That's as easy as it is to get on the discovery list.
I love it. Oh my goodness. LAFC 2, by the way, salvaged a point in a 2-2 draw against the Vancouver Whitecaps 2 on Sunday. They lost 7-6 on penalties, missing out on the extra point in the standings. Our two goal scorers were Christopher Jaime and Luis Muller. Luis Muller still doing great things for LAFC 2. Friday, August 30th versus Tacoma Defiance at home, Titan Stadium, 7:30 for your next LAFC 2 matchup. And oh, by the way, as a reminder, for all your Angel City needs, please be sure to listen to Angel City Chicks and to follow at Angel City Chicks on all your social media platforms.
Also, check out Soccer in 60 on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Empire Strikers YouTube channel or on the podcasting platforms that you can find us on. Yours truly happens to be a co-host on there, along with two of the Angel City Chicks, and that of Amanda and that of Nina Kiefer, along with the host of the show, Tim Kolotz. We cover everything in Los Angeles, in particular, indoor, outdoor, the whole shebang. Up until USL, we haven't gone through NISA. But check out Soccer in 60. Trying to grow out that show. If you're in the IE, that's KMET. I'm not entirely sure what the AM/FM station is, but it is an ABC affiliate. And that's a crazy thought, Scarf. You got Philly on ABC Radio every Thursday. Boom! Discovery rights.
All right, so we're there. We're at the point where we're done with all the other banter and such. So we might as well talk about going into the house of Wilfred Nancy. And I say the house of Wilfred Nancy because at lower.com field coming into this match in 42 matches in all competitions, he had lost exactly 2. 42 matches, 12 draws, and 28 wins in 42 matches with Columbus.
95 goals scored, Scarf, 36 goals allowed. A house of horrors for opposing teams.
By the way, Joel has now claimed our discovery rights. So in case we make it big, Joel's, we didn't claim our own. That's our fault. Look, this
does Panda get a default because she's married to her and this is a community property state?
But I mean, maybe then he just acquired 3 people's discovery rights. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Who's got Hello Kitty's discovery rights? Oh, wait. I do. I called it quick. Nobody.
Those were way too expensive. I'll just call the Gremlins discovery rights, and we'll
I'll trade you Hello Kitty for the Gremlins.
Oh, that's the last thing I want. Look, this was a club that needed no introduction coming into Leagues Cup. I believe, number 1 overall seed ahead of Club America.
Correct.
But they definitely did what they were supposed to do on their way to the final. They looked just as good as they did in last year's March to MLS Cup. Obviously, they've got some incredible stars, including one who I think now takes his place as the number 1 villain in LAFC lore post Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I don't think we had one. I don't care about Jeremy Ebobisse all that much.
Yeah.
I don't care about anybody on Carson right now. I know Pooch is kind of a drama king, but I'm not into any of those Galaxy guys as the villain as much. I know Pooch tried to be, but I don't care. I think public enemy number one is now, and likely maybe the best player in CONCACAF right now, is Cucho Hernandez.
I still don't have that animosity towards him or this team. I just think they're downright good, and they just have our number. I can't say they showboated against us. I can't say they've done anything. Did you see the clip of Wilfred Nancy walking by and shaking the hand and hugging every single LAFC coach? I'd hate to say it. It's just that Midwestern class and friendliness. I still don't hate the Columbus Crew. That being said, I wish we would have whooped up on them, but I just don't feel that rivalry, that hatred. When I think of the Crew, all I can think of it in my head is the womp womp sound that hopefully y'all heard on this pod. That's how we've been playing against them. Womp womp. Historically, we're 3-3 against it, but that's meaningless. The last 3 games are the ones that counted. It's still Carson, man. It's still anybody who wears that Herbalife stash. That's where I see red and I see knives. The Columbus Crew, honestly, I shudder with anxiety.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing about the Crew, they're incredibly talented, but they've also got this next man up philosophy, right? I mean, they lose Lucas Zelarayan, who was one of the best players in MLS. All they did was replace him with Cucho Hernandez. They lose Aiden Morris, who was one of the best young midfielders in MLS. And one of the players that looked absolutely great was Sean Zawadzki, a player who has come through the system for Columbus. They lose or don't play Patrick Schulte, their number one keeper for some reason. And all they do is bring up Guatemala's number one keeper, Nicholas Hagen, and he looked great. So there's this next man up mentality. There's an underdog mentality to some of their defenders, especially Steven Morera, who was great. Talked a lot about that matchup between him and Denis. And then, of course, they have to kind of stab us in the heart with 2 of their best players being former LAFC Christian Ramirez and, of course, the man who scored the first goal against the Sounders, club legend Diego Rossi. So it's hard because you're absolutely right. It's not like an intense, hateful, hurtful kind of rivalry. In fact, when we were there for MLS Cup Final, I tried to talk smack to those Columbus fans, and they were so stinking polite during the match that it was like, all right, fine, I'm just going to watch the game. Leave me alone. And then they offered to get beers with us afterwards. Like, those are
it's the Midwest, man. I still
think Cucho is now the new public enemy number one.
Because the guy's so stinking good. And obviously, he wasn't even the team's leading scorer heading into the final. He only had 2 goals. It was Diego Rossi who had 6, 3 braces, accounting for those goals. You talked about Hagen. Why is he getting the start? The guy played 3 games, allowed 2 goals, had 1 clean sheet. Nazi said, screw it. Let's roll the dice with him. Schulte's obviously the number one, but, this kid can up the accolades, and now he's just boosted his value and obviously his confidence. Think of how much more secure Columbus is moving forward in the regular season, knowing that they have Schulte and a damn good backup in that of Hagen. Like you said, the next man up mentality is an important thing. The Steven Morera thing, as we go through the starting lineup, is another interesting piece because keep in mind, he was teammates with Denis Bouanga for a couple of years at Lorient in France. So there's anybody that knows Denis' tendencies, which I'm sure he had no problem dictating to Wilfred Nancy, would be his old teammate, Nata Morera. Denis disappeared for long stretches, but it's because, tactically they just did a good job of preventing him from getting out on the run. We didn't have anything in terms of a counter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We still got to talk about lineups.
All right, let's get into it. Columbus with a 3-4-3. We already mentioned him once, but it's worth talking about. Nicholas Hagen, Guatemala's number one keeper right now, the 28-year-old. It was a surprise that he was starting in net to everybody except Nicholas because he did everything he needed to do. Dare I say he wasn't really tested in this match at all, especially in the first half. But just one of those things where you mentioned it, Philly. It's just another confidence builder for the Crew moving forward. Their back line of 3, Malty Amundsen, Rudy Camacho, and as Philly mentioned, the former teammate of Denis Bouanga over in France, Steven Morera. And a lot was made of that matchup on Apple TV ahead of the match. A lot was made up of that matchup ahead of MLS Cup. And I think it's safe to say Morera has done a wonderful job when needed to against Denis Bouanga, although not as many 1v1 opportunities for the two of them to go at each other. In this one, in the midfield, Mo Farsi, Sean Zawadski, who, again, I absolutely love watching as a player. He's very, very good. Max Arfston, and all 5 of Darlington Nagbe's MLS Cups go with him to every single match. And then at forward, we talked about it, a very potent front line most of the time, although I think we did a wonderful job against their front line in this one. Christian Ramirez, Diego Rossi, and Cucho Hernandez, who, I mean, just seems to kill us every time we face them in one way or another. This was every single way in this match. In the 18, a player who we will hear from for sure is Jason Russell-Rowe. Yevon Chaberko, Dewan Jones, and a Romanian. So Philly was excited to see Alexandru Matan come out as well. And I said it right to be nice on purpose. There you go. I won't call him Matan. Philly, LAFC starting a lineup that looked great on paper.
Yeah. So if you remember the game that we competed against the Crew in July 13th, we started out in that 4-3-3 where we absolutely got shellacked by a score of 5-1. So what's been working for LAFC as of late is this 3-4-3 formation. And for the most part, one could argue that it did work fairly well today. So let's talk about this real quick. Hugo Lloris getting the start in between the sticks. He started all but one Leagues Cup game throughout this month of August. You got Aaron Long, Maxime Chenot, Jesus David Murillo, who, as Steve confirmed, will most likely not be playing against Seattle on Wednesday. In that midfield section, you got Ryan Hollingshead, Edward Atuesta, Ilie Sanchez, Sergi Palencia, Denis Bouanga on the outside, Matty Bogusz on the outside, and making his first start for LAFC in place of Kai Kamara, Olivier Giroud. That's something that we could easily talk about. But out of all the players within the starting lineup, 5 of them had managed to start in every single game within the Leagues Cup. That would be Denis Bouanga. That would be Aaron Long. That would be Murillo, Palencia, and Ilie Sanchez. And several of these players did have really good games. In particular, I think Sergi Palencia played a very, very good game. But yeah, that's your starting lineup. For the players that came off of the Pine Pony, we have Kai Kamara, Timothy Tillman back in the lineup, Lewis O'Brien, who managed to get the start in the second half, Eddie Segura subbing in for a hurt Jesus David Murillo in the 50th minute in the second half, and Kike Oliveira. Those are your LAFC players that came in and played. No sense in telling you about the rest because it really didn't matter. I no, hear you. Scarf, you are muted.
That's what I get for coughing earlier. I forgot to hit the unmute button. Philly, I'm going to go through every single one of our shots on goal in the first half. You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. In the 5th minute, there's a little bit of early commotion in the box. There's a foul on Matty Bogusz just outside. The set piece gets recycled back out to the top to Matty Bogusz, and he has a slow worm burner that is easily picked up by Nicholas Hagen. That's in the 5th minute. I am now done with all of our shots on target in the first half. Thank you.
Yep, 3 shots with one of them on target, none of which coming after that 5th minute. That's how dominating Columbus was. It wasn't even a matter of LAFC feeling comfortable that Columbus dominated possession. It's the fact that they didn't allow us room to breathe. Where we succeed more often than not is on the counter. We couldn't even get off to the races and get any kind of good looks. 3 total shots, 1 on target. That's what we get within the first 5 to 10 minutes worth of action. And that's kind of what it was. But then the remaining 30 and change. This first half, we'll obviously talk about the goal, but this first half completely belonged to Columbus. There was nothing that LAFC beat them in whatsoever. I guess one could say that not getting called offside is a positive thing, but one could also argue getting called offside means that you were being aggressive. And, well, it was Columbus that got called offside once within the first half. They dominated us in shots inside the box, outside the box, accurate passes, list goes on and on.
We got crushed in the first half. And to be honest, we'll talk about the goal. I'm going to shut up and we'll just keep going. One thing I found quite interesting. The referee in the 11th minute, the early yellow on Rudy Camacho with a high boot to Edward Atuesta. And then 4 minutes later, it looked like Ilie did exactly the same thing to Darlington Nagbe, and it was just called a common foul. So I was a little confused as to where Ilie did not get a yellow, but Rudy Camacho did. Nicely done. We saw how dangerous Cucho could be in the 21st minute as a nice little bouncing through ball from Cucho to Christian Ramirez, but Ramirez just couldn't get to it. And then you had mentioned, Philly, I think if we have an MVP who's not an attacker in this one, you're absolutely right. I think, dare I say, all best 11 could be, maybe, if he keeps playing this way, Sergi Palencia in Major League Soccer. He's been great. He's been absolutely great for us. What I loved is, like at the end of the 23rd, start of the 24th minute, Darlington Nagbe starts this break so calmly. Like he just makes one little turn, finds some space, makes the first pass, and then he's off to the races. A little 1v1, unreal that how calm Darlington Nagbe can be. And you and I are sitting there like, oh, crap, here they come. It's a counter. Here they come. Here they come. And it's Sergi who dives to block the shot out. A great job by Sergi to kind of kill the rally, even though they did get a corner off of it, but Nagbe missed well wide. It's just those kind of plays from Sergi Palencia, Philly. For somebody who doesn't watch LAFC day in and day out and just looks at the stats, you might not see a lot of these things from Sergi, but he's been absolutely incredible for us.
100%. I mean, from his ability to defend, for his ability to actually contribute offensively, he's been fantastic. We should probably just talk about the goal and then get into the second half, because this is where the meat and potatoes of the game really took into effect. Unless you had something else you wanted to quickly dissect.
Yeah, no. Go right ahead, sir.
All right, 40. I mean, this one really stung because we're literally in the dying moments of the first half. You got this give and go between Mohamed Farsi and Sean Zawadzki. Farsi gets a pass intended for him and floats it up to Cucho, who hops up and absolutely Sean Kemp dunks on Ilie Sanchez. They have him listed as 5'9", but you wouldn't know that from that 42-inch vertical leap displayed on TV. Nevertheless, he hops up above Ilie, draws first blood for Columbus, and that was just awful. I mean, Farsi initially easily gets by Edward Atuesta. He received that pass from Zawadzki. There was nobody there. There was absolutely nobody there. He had nothing but time to float that up to Cucho, and that bleached blonde head or platinum colored head, whatever you want to call his hair color, he's just tough to defend, and he got the run of Ilie, and I mean, he plowed Ilie right to the ground, falling face first. 1-0 going into the locker room, and that really, really stung. Like you alluded to earlier in the podcast, had we gone in to halftime deadlocked at 0, we might be talking about a completely different game, but that certainly was a big kick to the crutch.
I'll tell you the problem I have, Philly, because you mentioned it. Mo Farsi has all the space in the world because he easily gets by Edward Atuesta. Well, if not for a stupid yellow card 8 minutes earlier, Edward Atuesta shoves Darlington Nagbe right in the back, in the very middle of the pitch. First of all, it's Darlington Nagbe. If anybody knows how to draw a foul and act like he has been mortally wounded in the middle of the pitch, it's the 5-time MLS Cup winning veteran Darlington Nagbe. But why? Why 37 minutes into the match are you shoving Darlington Nagbe? It cost you being able to play the second half, Edward Atuesta, but honestly, you were having such a bad first half anyway that you were going to have to go. I've been real nice to Edward Atuesta over the last couple of months because he's played much better and he's been much more within himself. But that's why Mo Farsi was able to get behind him. And you're absolutely right. There was nobody to close out the space. Farsi could pick out the runner. And oh, by the way, Cucho plays so hard every single possession. We were 90 seconds away, Philly, from undeservedly getting in 0-0, right? Because we had been dominated for the last 35 minutes or so of the half. But if we get in 0-0, imagine the boost of confidence that gives LAFC, because we live to fight another day. Did we look good? Hell no. But it's still 0-0. It doesn't matter what happened in those 45. It matters about the adjustments that Steve is going to make in the second half, which he killed it at, made wonderful adjustments. But instead, the Crew 14-1-4 this season when scoring first. And when LAFC concedes first, that would be 0 wins, 4 losses, 4 draws on the season. So the proof was in the pudding. The writing was already on the wall. But you know what? With the way we came out in the second half, Philly, I had belief. And once we got the I mean, it was all open there. Like we mentioned, Edward Atuesta comes out for Lewis O'Brien to start the second half, and we play much, much better.
Just thinking, Farsi had so much time in the box that we could have called Mississippi's by the time some defenders would have caught up to him. Yes, Mississippi's. Yeah, second half adjustments. You said it, Lewis O'Brien coming in for Edward Atuesta, and changes needed to be made. Steve would go to the bench and utilize quite a few of his subs, although 5 minutes into the second half, he'd have to utilize a sub that he didn't intend on doing, in that of Jesus David Murillo. He would take a knock and have to come out of the match, paving the way for Eddie Segura to come into the game. Unfortunate for LAFC, as we mentioned earlier, Muri would have to come out. He'd not only been part of the team's defensive play, obviously the guy's a center back, but he also had his hand in the offense. You were jokingly saying that Jesus David Murillo was operating as a striker in Leagues Cup, a part of the midfield moving forward. He was playing consistently well, and we know he's a yellow card obtaining machine, but he was playing well. To have him out, that obviously, stunk. But Eddie Segura came in, and I would say for the most part, Steady Eddie had a pretty good game. Without a doubt, one of his better games since coming back off of 2 ACLs. But that's going to hurt when you lose a player that had started every single game for you in Leagues Cup and was a big part of the success coming up until this final in Columbus.
No, he's been massive. I'm actually going to talk after we're done with the recap about how that Murillo injury could really start to affect us moving forward. But I'll say this, Segura played great. Eddie Segura put on a wonderful 40-minute shift for us. Very happy to see him. We were a little worried, a little trepidatious, as the kids say, that Eddie could go
trepidatious.
that they could go 40 minutes, but he did.
Ben, he just lied to you.
But you mentioned it. Eddie's Jesus Murillo likely not available in just a couple of days. In the 54th minute, we all got excited, but correctly called Matty Bogusz offside. We were screaming, we were yelling. But you know what, Philly? It was just good practice for just a couple minutes later when instead of Matty Bogusz scoring, Matty decided to start the Olivier Giroud account for LAFC and Philly. We were at Level Up, the upstairs of the fields at BMO Stadium, along with hundreds and hundreds of other supporters, the 3252. It was absolutely incredible. And I think it's safe to say they're going to have to retighten some of the bolts in that establishment, because when Olivier Giroud scored, it was cathartic how much we celebrated and cheered that goal, because for the first time this season and for the first time in 2 seasons, we had finally drawn level with Columbus Crew. Were we ever level with them at 5-1? I don't know. But we definitely weren't level with them. They were up 2-0 in MLS Cup. They were up, I think, 4-0 before we scored at home. We were finally level with Columbus Crew and Philly, trending in the right direction.
Yeah, Olivier got his first goal in his first start. So that's going to bode well for his confidence. Such a big body battling against the Danish Amundsen. He had no shot at it. So Olivier ends up delivering. And yes, we got some good practice screaming and cheering. I got some good practice swearing and yelling when we got called offside. Unfortunately, I would continue to swear as the game would mature. And for the family that was right next to us that had the little ones, if any of you listen to the pod, I do apologize. I utilized the F-bombs quite a bit. They were dropped a bit. I think at some point, one of the woman pulled her younger daughter aside. They went to a different chair, and I might take responsibility for that. A lot of F-bombs, not realizing that there were kids around me. But Olivier opens up his scoring account, which is good, Scarf. I can't say he'd been playing amazingly up to this point. I'd even venture to say that he probably shouldn't have even started. But needing to tweak the lineup, not having much tape not knowing how he would have chemistry with Denis and some of the other players. I think that would have been a way to kind of throw a wrench in Wilfried Nancy's tactical board by starting somebody like Olivier Giroud. And I'm glad he got the goal, but I'm still of the camp thinking that he probably should have come on later. I would have liked having Kai Kamara in there for at least the first 65 minutes of the game.
I'll say this. I think against Columbus, maybe you don't start a Giroud because exactly what Carlos C. said in the chat, I completely agree, that Giroud did not get the service needed for an Olivier Giroud. If you're going to have Olivier Giroud on the pitch, you got to find ways to get the ball into the box and get it up towards that beautiful coiffed hair of his so that he can put it into the back of the net. It doesn't take much. It's not like he rose over everybody in the box and dunked on him when he scored the header that he did. In fact, he was kind of being pulled back a little bit on the ground and found a way to angle it in. I think I just pulled my neck trying to do what he did right now. But
oh God, who gets injured recording a podcast sitting down?
It's one of those things, though, Philly, that we can kind of look at it hindsight 2020. But I'll say this: this is the hard one for me because I have an issue with what turned out to be the ramifications of the substitution that we made next in the 62nd minute with Kike Oliveira coming on for Matty Bogusz. Timothy Tillman coming on for Ilie, I thought was much needed and maybe could have even happened. Maybe could have even happened at the half, right? I think maybe if Timothy Tillman is 100% match fit, he comes on at the half. I'm not sure he was yet, but you know what? He played very well. I was very happy. But I'll say this. I'll talk about it in a minute because we have some things to go through before we get there. The Kike Oliveira sub for Matty Bogusz, I don't have a problem with what Kike was doing, but it's what we lost by taking Matty out that I'm going to touch on in just a little bit. It's frustrating. I'll say that.
Frustrating. I agree. It would change though the way that we played, and for better or for worse, I don't know. You could be the judge of that. We looked a lot better with Timothy Tillman in the lineup, and Kike Oliveira actually had himself a nice opportunity, one that wasn't capitalized on, and one that wasn't necessarily created by LAFC, more so a miscommunication between the crew defenders. But we had a couple 71st minute Cucho, another brilliantly placed ball. Like, not only can the guy score goals, man, he can really set up his teammates very well. Christian Ramirez, the intended recipient, his header goes right into the hands of Hugo Lloris. Several minutes go by. Chris Lafferty's favorite player. And by the way, shout out to Lafferty for joining me on One More Sleep this last time around. We had good fun in your absence as you were at a Star Wars themed wedding. I had my Darth Philly mask. He had his Boba Lafferty mask on. It was a good time. His favorite player, Maxime Chenot, would take a long, unimposing shot from outside of the box, but it wouldn't be much for Hagen to make the save. And then we talked about that sub scenario. And I don't know, you kind of scratch your head. If we're in a situation where we're involved in penalty kicks, do you want or would you rather have Olivier Giroud or Kai Kamara in? I don't know. I guess we could talk about that. But 78th minute, that turns around. And then, we continue to progress. Scar Palencia, another great pass to a charging Denis, but Hagen there to make the deflection. And you are raising your hand. So, yes, Mr. Teacher.
This is the part that I'm talking about where it hurts that we lose Matty Bogusz. Now, you're absolutely right, Philly. In the 83rd minute, Kike made something out of nothing, right? He attacks the defense. He gets basically on someone's back, and he's still able to put a little toe poke to it, right? And it almost chipped the keeper, right? That is one of those plays, and this is what is going to kill me when Kike Oliveira leaves to go to Toluca, if he does, which we don't know yet, but if he does.
It ain't over till it's over, Scuff.
What I think we are going to miss from Kike Oliveira is how he is able to create something out of literally nothing. The pressure that he puts on the defense just by continuing to stay high and attack the ball every single time. Or the fact that he will outrace a defender to a ball that a defender didn't even see Kike in the picture. It's all of these little things that have made him so much more important now that he left, played with Uruguay, came back, and figured out how to finish. Now that he figured out how to finish and he thinks he's the best player on the pitch because he's playing like it, those are the things that we're going to miss. He has become a stone-cold killer out there and somebody that we need to watch for. However, In the 80th minute, Denis Bouanga's free kick had absolutely no air under it. And because it was a poor free kick, Diego Rossi was off to the races until Timothy Tillman makes a superhuman play.
Yeah, the
2
tackle was
minutes
amazing.
later, Denis has nothing on the corner kick because it's right at the defenders. It's low. It's a hard line drive. And then again, we have to get everybody back to stop the counter. With Matty Bogusz, the service that we have been getting from Matty Bogusz this season has been some of the best in Major League Soccer. And by needing to switch that responsibility over to Denis Bouanga, we saw immediately how it put us in dangerous spots. And that's got to be something that Steve Cherundolo sees when he looks back at this tape, how Schmurdy, you mentioned it in the chat and several others have, how our set pieces, our service was just terrible. And I think it didn't get better when we lost Matty Bogusz out there on the pitch. We lost our ability to be as deadly on these set pieces and corner kicks.
Sorry, that we have a Hagrid that somehow got his way into the studio. Say hi, Hagrid.
Hello, Hagrid. Hello, Panda.
And that's Panda. Panda's not Hagrid. And Hagrid's my cat's name for those of you who aren't watching. Yes. I don't. Hagrid is not a cute pet name for my wife. God, that would be really weird.
Oh, but Philly, that brings us to stoppage time. And if we can just get in, there's no extra time in Leagues Cup. There's just penalties.
Yep, 25 out of the 76 Leagues Cup matches ended in penalty kicks. And LAFC had already felt froggy enough to jump to the next lily pad mentally because that's what they were playing for. And and they got burned for thinking that way. It was an awful goal to concede. We allowed one. We conceded towards the end of the first half in the dying moments. We do it yet again. Off of a throw-in, Cucho was trying to connect with his teammate, Canadian Jason Russell-Rowe, but somehow, some way, Hugo misjudged, reacted slowly. He probably wasn't wearing his orthotics because he was flat-footed on his reaction. That ball bounced. That Cucho had it as intended for a cross, and just like that, we go down 2-1. You look at the replay. Was he screened off? Did Aaron Long get in his line of vision? He just reacted ever so slowly. Flat-footed is exactly what Taylor Twellman said. Orthotics-less is what Philly is saying. A tough goal to concede in the dying moments of the match. That right there, a massive mental lapse.
It's hard because you know what he's trying to prevent at first, right? He sees Jason Russell-Rowe coming out of the corner of his eye for a header, and he's trying to prepare for something either straight on, like Christian Ramirez's was, or maybe something to his right. And he just kind of gets caught in between, indecision. You're absolutely right. But moreover, Philly, when you put the ball in a dangerous spot and you make MLS defenders and MLS keepers have to figure out what to do, sometimes these kind of things happen. We saw it in the very last match, right? When that ball, or was it William Yarborough, right? William Yarborough, he goes to catch it and it just goes right through the wickets, right? Like sometimes
That's a cricket reference.
You put the ball in a dangerous spot and MLS things happen. And this was an MLS thing that happened. I did not think Hugo played well in this match at all, but I didn't think he was tested all that much in this match at all. I think the lack of shots on target from Columbus was just as apparent to me as the lack from LAFC. And look, the last goal of the match, obviously the goal counts. The goal counts. I get it. But when you're pushing everybody forward, right? It's the everybody blitz defense on your Madden game, right? Where you rush everyone and then you forget to guard Travis Kelce, the tight end, as he goes over the top, and all it takes is a little dump. But that's what it felt like. It felt like someone took a dump on LAFC for sure, as Jason Russell-Rowe got behind everybody. What was a little frustrating, if I'm going to critique the goal at all, Philly, You see Hugo Lloris point at Aaron Long as if to say, you take Cucho, I'll cut off the angle on Jason Russell Rowe. Force Cucho to pass. And then Hugo doesn't move. He doesn't move. He doesn't come up to cut off the angle. He doesn't do anything other than stay right where he was. Jason Russell Rowe able to take full liberty with the shot. That was the frustrating part to me. If you point at Aaron Long and Aaron Long says, okay, and he immediately moves to Cucho, you have to come up to cut off the angle. It doesn't matter because that goal didn't matter, but it was frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron came up and made Cucho commit to that pass. But yeah, I mean, Jason was wide open and, you know, he gets rewarded. I mean, the connection between him and Cucho was quite nice. I mean, while he wasn't involved in scoring the goal, the second goal, he was very much involved in the play because he's the one that caused the chaos and the confusion to prevent Hugo from reacting the way he did. Now, he had 2 saves in the game. Not two. Yeah, Hugo had 2 saves in the game. I mean, look, over the course of the 6 Leagues Cup games, 17 saves, conceded 4 goals, 4 clean sheets. The guy had played very well in the Leagues Cup. This just wasn't the game. And you go to the press conference, and Steve said it himself, had it not been for 2 moments where the team was basically fell asleep. Totally different ball game. Yeah. It was all Columbus in the first half, and the idea that Steve had was to tire them out, wear them out, and then start to control the game in the second half. And true to the idea, that happened. LAFC came out in the second half and was a much, much better team. We talked about how they only had 3 shots, with one of them being on target. They ended up finishing the game with 9 shots, 4 on target. They would score 1. The goal that was taken away, while I swore up and down a storm initially at the offside call, yes, it was the right call. It came close with Kike Oliveira, taking advantage of miscommunication between Amundsen and the Ukrainian guy. I'm forgetting his name for that split second.
Rebka.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was that communication that Kike almost had his opportunity. We played a much better second half. In this case, Columbus just held on, weathered the storm, and capitalized on mistakes. They were a much better team than us these last 3 games. I'm not going to say they were a much better team than us in this entire game because we did play them well. We had them in the palm of our hand. We had the opportunity to close this game out. I don't know how it would have ended had we gone the penalty kicks. In that situation, very rarely does the best team win, other than the 2022 MLS Cup final where we beat the Philadelphia Union. But still, a nerve-wracking scenario nonetheless, just in the dying moments to lose in that way. Depending on how Leagues Cup matters to you, I'm going to argue that this, without a doubt, is top 5 most heartbreaking losses that LAFC has incurred since the team became a thing in 2018.
And look, to all the Dolo out people, because we got a couple of you in the chat, and I get it, right? I get it. I hear what you're saying in that, hey, LAFC has lost its last 4 cup opportunities. Sure, I hear you. Look it up and down all of Major League Soccer. Who else is playing for those 4? Other than Columbus, where has Philadelphia been? Other than MLS Cup?
Where's Atlanta been?
Where has Carson been? Where are all of these clubs in? We've been consistently putting ourselves there. And last I checked, just so I can be clear, even when he was a player, he didn't do it very often, but he's certainly not doing it from the sidelines anymore. Steve Cherundolo does not kick a ball anymore. Steve Cherundolo doesn't score a goal. He doesn't block a shot. He doesn't make a pass. He doesn't do anything out there during the 90 minutes plus stoppage time of play. And I think everybody who is Dolo out has to ask themselves, but what about the adjustments made in the second half? Is there something to be said? Because several of you in the chat are saying, and you're absolutely right, you can't fall asleep in the 91st minute. You can't fall asleep in the 45th minute. You
can't fall asleep at all until after the game.
100% correct. 100% correct. But my thought on Steve Cherundolo is that he's not the one executing towards the end of the match. He's the one putting us in position. Now, did we get outplayed for the most part in last year's MLS Cup final? Sure. But in this one, now that you gave him, as Max Bredos would say, a second bite of the cherry, he did extremely well in the second half, making the adjustments to put us in position to at least go to PKs, if not get a late one to win ourselves.
To your point, Johnny, we're always in the effing finals, bro. Always. Would you rather not be in this situation? Would you rather us not make or get out of the group stages or the playoffs just because a little bit of that hope is what kills you time and time again? We're in the conversation. Always. Consistently. What have we done since we came into this league? 5 finals. Yes, it sucks. I agree with you. But this isn't on the head coach. It really isn't. And specifically not this last round. People that complain about Dolo being out are the same people that burn their Clayton Kershaw jerseys that all of a sudden bought a new one when the Dodgers won the World Series. It is what it is. It sucks. And if you're Dolo out, fine. That is on you. But I would like to hear an option as to who can do it better. Is there truly a coach out there that in these situations would propel us to victory in all of these finals? I would love to know who it is. And if anybody says Jurgen Klopp, I'm deleting your comment from the chat. Let's be realistic. Let's be realistic.
Yeah,
Leave Dolo out, fine. But let's make this conversation a little more constructive. And that's by adding suitable candidates for this position. That's all I'm going to say about that. I personally think the Dolo out rhetoric is idiotic, 100% idiotic. In particular right now, because none of you care about the League's Cup. This wasn't a tournament that happened until 2 years ago. So in the grand scheme of things, if you don't care, why are you Dolo out right now when the reality is we are campaigning for a phenomenal MLS season where we have a damn good shot at winning the MLS Cup? Simple.
No, you're absolutely. And look, we still have another cup to play for on Wednesday. LAFC traveling to Tukwila, 7:30 p.m. Starfire Sports Complex in front of a capacity crowd of 4,500. 4,500 on turf. It's going to be fun. Johnny, I appreciate, see what I like about Johnny in saying that comment, right? Johnny gets it, right? He understands the frustration. He understands where we're at.
I'm also not mad at that comment, actually.
No, I'm not mad. Johnny's comment is hire Wilfred Nancy. He wins.
I'm not mad at that comment.
Listen, but that means that Johnny gets it, right? He understands that while it might not be Steve Cherundolo, Philly, you're absolutely right. Who's walking through the door that is better or more qualified in Major League Soccer, someone who will come to MLS and coach that is more qualified than Steve Cherundolo? There's just, Steve Cherundolo has played himself into the coached himself into the conversation of the U.S. men's national team. He's coached himself into the conversation of some of these Bundesliga clubs that are maybe looking for a change or let me make sure I get this right, Philly. Zweite Bundesliga, right?
Zweite Bundesliga, du hast das richtig gesagt.
There you go. You don't think Hannover 96, if they sack their coach, aren't going to be calling LAFC the very next phone call to bring the mayor of Hanover back to coach? It could be a triumphant, I don't want to talk about it because I love having Steve Cherundolo. And the thing I like about Steve Cherundolo is at the end of the match, you can ask him questions because we do, and we see our buddies do it all the time between Justin and Scott and Michael and everybody else who's in and Josh, and everybody else who's in there. He stands up and answers the questions. So, look, we can talk about Cherundolo. I'd rather talk about guys like Edward Atuesta. I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for a lot of other things, but Philly, we're approaching the hour mark, so I know we got to go soon. But it's not Dolo, in my opinion, and I think you're right there with me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wasn't a Bob out kind of guy either, and I didn't know who he would replace him with, and I was one of those guys to think that I'm just a homer who doesn't think anything. Go back to when Steve got announced as the head coach at LAFC, and I wasn't even cautiously optimistic. I was cautious, and a lot of it had to stem from the fact that, look, the experience wasn't there. But obviously, we've gone to several finals. We've had success, far more success than we ever had under Bob Bradley. It's just this is just a team mentality thing. Yesterday was not about the tactics. But either way, it was the League's Cup, and the League's Cup is just a BS money grab. So this shouldn't matter, right? Is that the way that we're looking at it? It shouldn't matter because Wednesday kind of matters, and you'll be seeing quite a bit of us this week because we got one more sleep tomorrow. Then there's the game against Seattle and Tukwila in front of a capacity crowd of 4,500 on synthetic turf. And then we've got our recap episode. Then we got one more sleep before Houston. You're going to see plenty of Philly in the scarf this week.
Soccer USA, Philly and I have talked about this. I completely agree with your comment who says, I want to see Dolo slam his clipboard down and start cussing up a storm. Sometimes players need to see the fire in the eyes of the coach. I would love that. I don't know if the guy from San Diego is wired that way, but I would absolutely love it. You'd get it from Bob. I don't want Bob. We're good. And then the other thing, real quick, just to address one more thing in the chat. Johnny, who is continuing to chat with us, we appreciate this. The hypothetical question from Johnny is, what is the excuse if LAFC loses to a USL team in the Open Cup final? Let's back up a second.
That's bold that the USL team will make the final.
Well, Philly, here's the fun part. If we make the final, and Indy 11 upset Sporting Kansas City. Do you know what that means? That means Indy 11, a USL club, is playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Woo! I love
not bad for a team that
Cup.
Might not exist down the road.
Only in Open Cup, folks. That's why I love the US Open Cup. Now, to answer your question, Johnny, burn it all down. I would be a little upset. But that being said, I think it'd be really fun to be able to play Indy 11. We do a whole getting to know you. It's September 25th, by the way, was when the final would be. We would do a whole getting to know you on Indy 11. Hell, Philly, you and I'm saying it right now. If it's Indy 11 and LAFC, we're doing everything we can to get Indy 11's coach on Defenders of the Bank so that you can hear straight from the man from Indy 11 himself. I think it'd be great. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fun. Smirty said it in the chat. USL has won for 25 years. Yeah, the last time a non-MLS team won was the Rochester Rhinos defeating Marcelo Balboa's Colorado Rapids team. That was a very long time ago. Johnny, the only thing I'll say about a lonely MLS Cup is there are teams with a ton of money and a ton of resources, aka the New Jersey Energy Drinks, that have been in this league since the beginning. They don't have an MLS Cup. Just saying, to put that into perspective. Not a team that's poor, a team that's got endless amounts of money. That Red Bull organization, loaded. They haven't won a damn thing. So while it might be a lonely MLS Cup, not everybody gets to celebrate that. And keep in mind, man, it's only September around the corner. There might be 2 MLS Cups when we're done having this conversation in December.
Yeah, by the way, his name is Sean McCauley, Indy 11's head man. Who, by the way, he opened his senior playing career at a small club called Manchester United. So
yeah, I've heard of them. Diego 2 in the Instagram says, do you think Columbus is the best built team in the league? Yes.
Right now, you have to say it.
Right now that this is the best team in MLS, if not in CONCACAF, arguably maybe even one of the best MLS teams ever.
Yeah, and 40-something ranked Colorado Rapids in all the rankings of Leagues Cup. They're going to Champions League as well. Because of PKs, they won the 3rd place match. So how awesome is that? All right, Philly, we've been here an hour and some odd minutes. What? Oh boy, I already see it coming.
I still think the Columbus Crew can kiss my furry little butt. There you go, Soccer USA. She was holding out for you.
All right, my man. Look, Philly, we're gonna do this again tomorrow.
Yeah,
let's call one more sleep.
Against Seattle again.
It's Seattle. So we're going to record something new, but it's going to sound like something we've done a whole lot. So
terrorizing in Tukwila. I don't know. All right, I'm done. You're done. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.